Da-da.
Yeah, stand by.
Da-da.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Monday, the 27th of September. This month flew by. I mean, just absolutely flew by. And of course, I always had this theory that once you get to Labor Day, it's basically a sprint from Labor Day till Christmas. It's just sort of once you get past Halloween, it's one long day from November 1st to December 26th. The Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. And since it is a sprint, before you know it, the white flakes will be, those sacred white flakes will be coming down for snow lovers. And for those who perhaps love snow just a smidge less, they might want to make sure the roads are clear. So you snow removal guys out there, make sure you get the salt because rock salt is going to be at a premium. And Omni has plenty of rock salt at the lowest prices you can find in the tri-state area of New York City. Pellado ice melting products, mag, ice pellets and flakes, and anything else you need to get you through the rest of the fall and the winter. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York on Long Island, 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town. OmniTrueValue.com. And let's sing Jingle Bells, wholesale holiday lighting by Giannini. Your complete holiday lighting specialist meeting all your decorating needs. And you contractors out there, a holiday lighting open house free event on Tuesday, October 5th. That's next Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're at 162, or where the event is next door at 164 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York. And their telephone number to RSVP, or if you're interested in getting some business done, 631-957-5106. And the website there is liholidaylighting.com. So, on that special note, whoops, hang on a second. I gotta get rid of that.
I'd like to say to Trevor McKelvey on the chat board, who says Joe Rayo doesn't live in the mountains. Everybody, I do live at an altitude of about 460 feet, and not too far away from where I am is the Appalachian Trail, where you can go as high as like 1,100 feet. I don't live at 1,100 feet, but it's not as high as Mr. Giaffi, who's at 2,200. And I guess that plays
nosebleed. Although you know what, I don't get nosebleeds anymore for some reason. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
In the land of
you're
nosebleeds.
Higher than I am.
Yes.
And once again this morning, after Renata said, "Boy, it got chilly last night," I said, "This is the morning. This is the morning I finally dropped below 50. This is the morning when we finally broke into the 40s." And I looked at the thermometer and checked. 7:17 a.m., 50 degrees. Still haven't gotten below 50 degrees
and
yet,
this
Joe.
is my, let's see, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This is my fourth consecutive morning of lows in the 40s. My low this morning was 47. I already got the 40, and there's a new chat poll up there, which takes us now to the next level as far as temperatures are concerned. And the question tonight, and so far 43 votes. Folks have kind of learned their lesson from the last one, because the total, Joe, is very close here. 51. They're going to have to do a recount in several states with regards to this one. 52% of the vote for Joe Rayo, 48% for me. And the question is, since Joe Chaffee has already hit 40, the next is 32. Who gets there first?
I don't know. You'll get to 30. You'll get down to, let's say, 31 degrees, and then I'll have to go back to the folks on the chat board and say, I want you to find another 41 votes for me.
and by the way, you know, the ultimate question when we get, they're not going to do it now, but when we get to the end of October, beginning November, is who's going to see the first accumulating snow. That'll be an interesting one to test everybody out. Although I personally would vote for you, but you know, that's
No, don't vote for me. I don't want to. I don't want to win that poll.
No.
You could have it. You could have all the snow you want this year, Joe. And as I mentioned that yesterday, that of the 10 wettest summers at Central Park, this is for Central Park now, 7 of the 10 had the following winter below normal snowfall. So maybe after winter where we were close to 40 inches last year, and then we had a ridiculous, 5 inches on the year before, maybe this year we'll drop back below normal. Is that Mr. Casper that I see on the screen with you?
I'll bring it back up in a second, but just to bring this point out, since when you go back and look at statistics, something between 60 and 65% of the time the snowfall is below normal. So if it's 7 out of 10, I mean, is that really statistically significant? Since more often than not, you're going to have a below normal year. It's just that when you have the above normals years, you have them so above normal that they skew the numbers upward. But if you go count the below and above average years, it's roughly at about 6 to 4, 6.5 to 4 to 3.5 below versus above. So we'll see. We're always grasping at some kind of magic silver bullet to get us, an idea of the future, instead of just waiting for the future to become the present. This is a special day because, and this was taken, by the way, these among other pictures were taken a couple of weeks ago when I was down in Seaside Park in Ocean County, and I just wanted to wish Alan a very happy birthday. And by the way, as far as I won't say what his exact age is, but Joe, I will say that it's the same age that Lucy wished Ethel when they got into the fight over the hostess pants. And we'll just leave it at that.
I got to tell you, son, he looks younger than you in that picture. Well, I don't know why, but I think he looks younger than you.
I just fixed the lighting on the picture. Okay. But I appreciate the compliment nonetheless.
Well, you look the old grizzled, synoptic forecaster.
Oh no, I understand. The goatee, the grain goatee does make me look, although it's like different colors. It does make me look older, but I'm at the age where I really don't care. So, No. Anyhow, happy birthday to Alan, and we wish him so many, many more. In the meantime, let us move on to Sam, where we have an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft there at the moment. And Tom Cotino was asking about, because I mentioned earlier on a post on the chat board before the show, somebody, they were talking about Sam, and I mentioned the fact that it probably had an eye-wall replacement cycle, a long eye-wall replacement cycle, plus some upwelling because it's moving so darn slow. I'm sure it's having, the upwelling is beginning to have an impact, which is why we went from 932 millibars to 956 millibars, which is, I think, where we are now on the latest recon that I just looked at. But an eye-wall replacement cycle. So just think of it like this. If you ever watch a line of thunderstorms, oftentimes what happens is, these storms peak out, they die out, and then new ones form as the line moves east. Well, the same thing happens really in the eye wall. You get thunderstorms that develop around the eye wall. They reach a maximum intensity, and then they go through their own life cycle. So those storms die out, but as long as the dynamics are still there, the new ones will form to replace it. So while it's in that process of doing that, the strength tends to fluctuate. Usually, if it's just finished strengthening rapidly, it'll come back off a bit. And sometimes once the eye wall replacement cycle is done, it could very well start strengthening all over again, assuming that everything is the same. And David Schwartz pointing out that there's a double eye wall, which is really kind of telling you that the eye wall replacement cycle is probably just about done. The old eye is dying out, and the new eye is coming in, and there's a reconnaissance aircraft there right now, Mr. Rayo. So the pressure from last night, when I saw a plane there around, I don't know, it was around 8 o'clock or 8:30. It was at 9:32, and then a couple of hours later they had another fix, and it was at 9:46. So obviously there was something going on, and now we've kind of leveled off at 9:57. And I would suspect that if we watch the loops tonight, you might see the pressures start to drop again as it moves a little bit more to the northwest.
Yeah, and this thing came very, very close to reaching Cat 5 yesterday, Joe, and then we had the, as you pointed out, the I-will replacement cycle, which knocked it back to a 3, but that's only temporary. It looks like it's going to get back up to a 4, and it continues to remain straight on through the next 5 days on the track as an M,
yes,
major hurricane.
Yeah, they take it to 35 and 60, and it's still a major hurricane at that point. So I guess the longer term question is it going to get up to Nova Scotia? And if it does, there's an upper low there. There's probably going to be some extratropical stuff going on. It'll be interesting to see if that's ultimately where it winds up. And I'm not so sure whether it will wind up there or not. You can make a case for it doing that. You can also make a case for it to getting ejected out to the northeast and passing south and east of Newfoundland. But it'll be interesting to see if it winds up, kind of rocket shipping. Okay, yeah, I know. I need a glass of water. Rocket shipping up, and accelerating. It'll be interesting to see what kind of storm we'll have. But that's to be determined.
Well, and yesterday when we were doing Joe and Joe Sunday morning, if you did just simple extrapolation, that system looked like it was taking dead aim straight at Bermuda. But we said that over a span of time, much beyond 3 or 4 days, that thing is going to turn either to the left or to the right of Bermuda. And in this particular case, it looks like it's going to be to the east or to the right. Not to say that Bermuda is not going to get shaken to any great degree, but they will be seeing probably some squally rain and showers, and of course, very, very rough seas. One would not like to attempt to go out into the water or anywhere near the water over the next several days, especially if you live on the Isle of Bermuda.
The ocean water temperatures, John Charles, are in the low and middle 80s, figure between 83 and 86. And it's not even to 20 degrees north yet. I mean, it's still down at around, what was on the advisory, 16 and change? 16.3, 52.7. And the ocean water temperatures are in the low 80s all the way up to, 35 degrees north. So, I mean, there's nothing, from that standpoint, there really is nothing to keep it from maintaining its strength. The issue maybe as it gets further north is whether it starts getting involved with some southwesterly shear. But for now, ocean water temperatures are warm all the way up, so there's not going to be that is certainly favorable for strengthening. And by the way, kind of looking at this, it looked a little ragged this morning, but it seems like it's a little more improved on the satellite signature going into this evening. It's still on the smallish side. I mean, this is not a big storm from the standpoint of geographic coverage. You got to get in those hurricane force winds. You got to be within 15 to 20 miles of the center, and that's pretty small.
Right. Still a tight little storm, but a tight, nasty little storm with those powerful winds circulating around. And again, as we always see, whenever these things move northward, especially over the colder water, the circulation seems to expand, and this will eventually expand, although it won't expand to such a degree that it's going to expand all the way back to the Atlantic seaboard.
No.
But it's going to be a pretty significant agitator, if you will, for the east coast of the United States in terms of kicking up the surf and making for significant swells and waves and undertow. So the season's over already. I mean, no one's going to the beach, but you may still want to, if you do go to the beach, you may want to observe, how rough the seas are going to be, probably, especially later this week when the storm comes up toward our latitudes.
Yeah, the surf might get kicked up a bit, but that's still a few days away at least. But that'll be the only issue if you are headed for the shore. So people do like to swim in water with water temperatures around 70 or even in the upper 60s. It's not my cup of tea, but for some folks, and it's actually I always loved because September. I thought after Labor Day was always a great time to go down to the beach because nobody was there. Which is a plus. The latest track model guidance goes, they all have it passing well to the east of Bermuda now after the GFS, for one run. You get the that one model run a couple of runs ago. Now, vast majority of the models, almost all of them have it passing well east of Bermuda by 150 to 170 miles. And then after that, there's a little bit of you get a little bit of variance. Some close to Newfoundland, some because there's this upper low that's going to be up there, so the upper low might pick it up and absorb it. So it's a little hard to say how that's all going to play out. And as far as the intensity guidance is concerned, remarkably, out to Joe 100 and you have to go out beyond 5 days before you really start. Actually, you almost have to go out to the 6th day before you start to see it weakening below a Category 3 hurricane.
And it's kind of amazing that you would see that so far north at this particular time of the year. But that's the way it goes. This particular storm has been potent. Well, we saw how strong this thing was going to get, quite a number of days ago, Joe. It just had that look to it, and moving into that zone of very little wind shear, you just knew the thing was going to pop, and it has. And now it looks like it's going to maintain its strength, even as it heads northward into colder waters later on in the week.
Yes, and by the way, there's still a couple of other systems in the tropics running around, so we can take a quick look at those, as the Hurricane Center should be updating their tropical weather outlook. And we've got 3 orange X's. Now, one of the reasons, by the way, we still have the remnants of Peter kind of sitting east of Bermuda, and that is actually creating a little bit of troughing here, which is helping to pull Sam toward the north. So, who knew that Peter was going to get in the way here? But they've got as of 2 p.m. So this hasn't been updated yet. So why don't we come back to this in a little bit? And then you've got the next 2 tropical waves that are moving off the African coast, and both of those are at one is at 80%, 50 and 80 on one wave, and on another wave it's also 50 and 80. So as far as percentage chance of development, but again, let's see, that's as of 2 p.m. So we'll come back to that. In the meantime, another beautiful, delightful day. Although if you're in northern New England, you've had showers to deal with today, as a little bit of a warm front is going by, setting up for a cold front that is dropping down from eastern Canada. You can kind of see the edge of the clouds there, not quite to the New York state line, but getting a little bit closer. And that's going to be the system we'll be dealing with tomorrow. And it's really the only thing of consequence during this work week. Otherwise, the weather was great today, all the way down into Florida. Still getting some action in the southwest, where we're seeing an upper low spinning around, and that's creating some showers and thunderstorms, and also some heavy rains moving into the Pacific Northwest as the weather system comes crashing in there. And if you look at the radar tonight, pretty loaded up in Washington State and down into Oregon and Northern California. So, rather the first, let's call it the first substantial system to come into the Pacific Northwest. You can see what's going on in the southwest with a few heavier downpours and thunderstorms, although I'm not seeing any kind of flash flood warnings up. And the east is quiet, with the exception again of northern New York, northern Vermont into Maine, where we see some scattered showers here. But other than that, we are in good shape into the first part of tomorrow.
Well, now we're talking about tomorrow, and we're talking about a cold front that will be working its way down into our area, probably moving on through the immediate tri-state area during the early to mid-afternoon hours. And I feel, looking at the model guidance, Joe, that we could see some showers in here as soon as, let's say, 7 or 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then there might be, and I noticed that the Storm Prediction Center had parts of our area in a marginal risk for severe weather. And maybe, just maybe, if the front is a little slower, we will be in an air mass that will support that, maybe into the early afternoon. A few thunderstorms, or maybe potent thunderstorms or gusty thunderstorms, rumbling about in parts of the area.
Yeah.
But then once that front pushes on through, it should push all that stuff to our south and put an end to the precip by later tomorrow, and then set the stage for some very autumnal type conditions here for the middle and latter part of this week.
By the way, SPC does not have any kind of tornado risk tomorrow, which is unusual considering the fact that every time we seem to have severe weather risk this summer and early fall, we get a little bit of tornado risk. They do have a hail risk of 5%. So that is a probability of 1-inch diameter hail or larger within 25 miles of any particular point.
And that should answer your question, Tom Cartino, about he's on the chat board. Jody says, Joe Ray, are you thinking hail? Well, there you go. I mean, if they may not be thinking tornadic activity, but they do have that risk, small as it may be, for maybe some hail here
and wind
tomorrow, right? And wind as well.
Yeah, and it's 5%, which is typical of what you would see with a marginal risk anyway. I don't think it's any big deal. I mean, if we get, we could certainly see a thunderstorm or two in the mix that winds up being on the strong side, or possibly, the odd severe thunderstorm warning. I don't believe that we will go to a slight risk in here for tomorrow, although, it's SPC. You never know what they'll see tomorrow in the overnight guidance and into tomorrow morning. So we'll just kind of leave it to them. But once the front passes, we're going to be done with rain through Saturday anyway. And WPC is not really overly bullish with respect to rainfalls over the next 7 days, even if you count some hints on the models that maybe we might see some rain on Sunday, maybe we won't if it passes more to the south. But it's basically on the order of about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. But you've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You're going to have 4 days where it should be, bone dry with no issues. Nothing in the southeast, Joe. I'm dry for the next 7. Big rains in Texas and on up into the southern plains, actually reaching up all the way up into South Dakota. And a little bit less in and around the western Great Lakes and in the Ohio Valley. Central and Southern California, Nevada, Western Arizona, bone dry, but the Pacific Northwest, particularly in the state of Washington, particularly in the northwestern corner of Washington, you're looking at several inches or more of rain over the next week. So that is WPC's view on all of this. And I don't know. I kind of looked at the overall pattern going forward, and a lot really is going to depend, I think, on what happens with Sam and how it interacts with this upper low that's going to be over in eastern Canada. So I do think, obviously we're going to be on the cool side in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states, and actually quite pleasant in the southeastern part of the U.S. with this northerly flow. And the impact of the block is that the upper low parked itself too far to the east to cause any problems with Sam. And you can see how Sam kind of straddles the edge of that ridge, and now it gets drawn northward into where that cutoff low is sitting over New Brunswick. And the GFS keeps wanting to kind of slingshot it, although it's a little further east here, but it kind of takes it out northeast and then turns it north and then northwest over, what is that, northern Newfoundland? So it kind of goes around, and then the upper low just completely absorbs it.
Right. I like how you say that, slingshot. It almost looks like it if they're in a square dance, the upper low kind of grabs onto Sam and says, "Come on, boy," and slings
promenade
it
across the
right
floor,
on into,
sashay right on out the door, out the door and into the glade, and everybody promenade.
Yes, something along those lines.
You never
don't do it quite as well as Tennessee Ernie Ford.
Yeah, well, you never cared for that Bugs Bunny cartoon, did you?
No.
Hillbilly Hair. I know the whole song.
Hillbilly Hair. Hillbilly Hair. I'm sure you do.
And by the way, take a look here, folks. We got the block that we did get blocking, but again, anytime you look at these when you look at these teleconnections, this is a negative NAO. But the thing is, the teleconnections don't really tell you too much about where the troughs are. When they say the trough is in the east, well, you know what? Right off the east coast is technically in the east. Usually you have to look at these things and say, okay, is the trough going to be at 85 degrees west? Is it going to be at 80 degrees west, or is it going to be at 75, or is it going to be at 70? And in this case, the trough wound up setting up at 70. The block is actually too far to the west, so it kind of made sense in the last analysis. And that blocking high holds for a little while before it starts to shift southward and weaken. But we still have, a little bit of a blocky look to things, going into next Thursday, and that kind of keeps. Actually, this is a kind of interesting split flow. Did you notice that, Joe? There's a flow that goes up across Canada like so. You've got an upper high that's sort of sandwiched in the middle there, and then you got this upper low that's sitting over the Great Lakes, another one over Montana, and sort of a Pacific flow that comes across the U.S. And yeah, it's a very interesting split flow to see during the first part of October.
Yeah, and I might point out that didn't we have, when we had Sandy, didn't we have a negative?
Yes, we have.
NAO?
Yeah, very negative, off the wall.
Yeah.
Off the wall negative. I mean, we had a mega cutoff forming over Tennessee and Kentucky, and it just wrapped, the storm. What you see happening over the upper low in Maine and how it takes it and just slingshots it up and around is what happened with Sandy, except the difference being that the upper low was down in Tennessee. And that's the difference. That's a huge difference. A lot of troughing going on in the West too this week, and then that kind of relaxes a bit. And let's just take it out to the long range just for little giggles. I mentioned the other day, maybe yesterday it was, that watch the Northwest Caribbean, where pressures are going to be on the low side. And I think if you take a look at here out in the long range, the GFS at least is picking up on that and bringing something into the Yucatan Peninsula. This is around day 8, 9, and 10, something forms down there. Meanwhile, across the U.S., nice looking upper low and trough eventually work its way into the east. I don't know, Joe. I'm looking at this overall pattern. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't call it cold, but I certainly wouldn't call it. I certainly wouldn't call it warm if we're going to be in a split flow where you're getting these systems moving across underneath the upper high. I mean, that actually, even toward the end of the forecast period, if that's right, that's downright cool again.
Well, when I looked at the maps here and I saw the latter part of this week, I think finally, as we started off the broadcast tonight talking about how I've yet to go below 50 degrees, I think we're finally going to crack that 50-degree mark when we get to the middle and latter part of this week. We will probably, I mean, it's not abnormally chilly, but at least a little stretch of unseasonable chill here coming our way for the mid and latter part of the week with that northwesterly wind flow. That should finally bring the temperatures down a bit. But it's going to be a lovely stretch of cool, as I said at the start, autumnal weather for much of the rest of the week and right on into the weekend and even into the start of next week. I think the chances of precipitation tomorrow from the passage of that weather front, and then after that, it could very well stay dry for, again, a number of days to come. And with the cool, dry airflow from Canada, should make for some very, very nice weather indeed.
I'm loading up the NAM from late this afternoon because I happened to see it, and it has the front somewhat active. So while it's it's loaded. But just to go, Joe, we're still running very tight here. So for those of you who weren't here last week, we had a poll as to whether Joe Rayo would see 40 degrees for a low first, or would I see 40 degrees for a low first at here in North Georgia, and I hit 40 degrees last Friday morning. So taking it now to the next step, the poll question tonight is: since I've already hit 40, the next is 32. Who gets to 32 degrees first? And so far, Joe, with 73 votes, we're still very close, a lot closer than we were the last time. You're at 53, and I'm at 47. Scott D. Zsa Zsa Gabor has been dead for quite a while.
Yes.
No, he's just
5 years.
Yeah, I mean, so sometimes when you see the stuff pop up on social media, you'll see an obit from somebody that left this earth a long, several or more years ago. So that's probably what you saw. No, she's been gone for a while.
And incidentally, if anybody's wondering, she never appeared on Green Acres. It was Ava Gabor that appeared on Green Acres, and Ava Gabor once commented, I forget to what character, I think it was maybe to Mr. Kimball, or maybe it was to Sam Drucker. She said, "I never had any talent. My only talent was my Zsa Zsa Gabor imitation."
I read somewhere that they did they did appear together. Zsa Zsa made like a cameo appearance someplace with her. I got to go back and look. I'll double check it. I thought I read that in an article, I think over a few weeks ago, but no matter. Here's our front for tomorrow, which we go through the overnight. It's not producing much. Now, the NAM has some showers tomorrow morning around daybreak in northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, and into Connecticut, and then they run by. So I think that's kind of maybe a little warm front that goes by. So, but then starting at around 1 or 2 o'clock, it starts to fire up some showers and probably a couple of thunderstorms in there from eastern PA over the Hudson Valley and in northern Connecticut, and then gradually they move down to the southeast. So you know what? There certainly could be the odd cell in there that winds up being on the strong side. Here's your front. Here's your high that's building in, and then because remember we got this northerly flow that is setting up. Thanks to that deep trough and upper low that's going to be sitting over New Brunswick, the cooler air starts coming in. We'll probably, no, I don't think 60s to near 70. I think on Wednesday, and I went for mostly 60s for Thursday and for Friday. And if you look at the NAM, there's kind of an implication, Joe, that you probably get. One of the things you got to look at those northerly flows is sometimes you could have sort of a weak upper trough that comes down and produces, some instability clouds and maybe a shower. But other than that, I think it's going to be, bone dry for the rest of the week and the weekend.
Yeah, I said 69 to 74 for the Hudson Valley. Yeah, I said 69 to 74 for the Hudson Valley tomorrow. 65 to 70, still not a bad outlook for Wednesday. And the cool stuff will be here for Thursday. And Thursday I've got a high maybe 63, and Friday 65. And temperatures both of those nights, Thursday night and Friday night, pretty much down in the upper and middle 40s. So I said, if I don't crack 50 by Thursday or Friday, nothing's going to crack 50. That probably will get me down into the 40s for the first time this young season. But I'll still be trailing Mr. Chiaffi because he's already been, through the 40s and is probably going to be heading into the 30s not too far down the road. Right?
Yes. Well, not in the immediate future, but we'll see when the first big cold high comes down. Actually, it would make sense.
I didn't call for any. I didn't call. By the way, I did not for the Hudson Valley. I did not call for any kind of instability shower or sprinkle either Wednesday or Thursday. And I think actually Friday and Saturday, sterling, beautiful, severe, clear days. Spectacularly clear, And Sunday, maybe some high clouds, but still no big deal, no problem. Temperatures right on through from Friday through Sunday, probably mid to upper 60s and maybe close to 70 again by next week on Monday. But still, even on Monday of next week, I don't have anything in terms of any significant precipitation.
Yeah, you know what? Sunday, I think, hinges on the upper low to our northeast and whether it allows for some room for a short wave that's coming out of the southern plains. I mean, you can see it here. This is on Saturday. You've got an upper low there in Kansas. You know, you've got this strong upper low over New Brunswick. We're still pretty much in a northwest flow. So Saturday is not an issue. If that upper low holds, anything coming out of the southern plains could wind up getting suppressed to the south. So I think that's the bet here, that upper low holds on and suppresses maybe whatever rain comes out of there, rushes out to the east, that it goes by, say, across West Virginia, maybe Maryland and the Delmarva Peninsula on Sunday. But then you go north of there, north and east in there, it should be okay. On the other hand, if that upper low is a little bit weaker, then you're going to have some more room for it to lift up. So that's something I think we'll have to look back at tomorrow and Wednesday to see where it's going. And I did notice, Joe, the 12Z run goes on the idea that the upper low in New Brunswick holds on so that the rain passes to the south. On the other hand, the 18Z model run was a little more aggressive in trying to lift that rain up, but it brings the northern edge of the range right to about New York. Well, it's got a little patch there in upstate New York that runs southeastward, but you see it's having trouble here pushing up into the northeast. So I'm going to stay cautiously optimistic. Saturday's not a problem. I'm going to stay cautiously optimistic with you for Sunday, and we'll revisit this tomorrow to see if there's going to be a little more room, if that upper low winds up being maybe a little further northeast or not quite as strong. We'll see.
Now how did you're showing the 18Z GFS?
Right.
Well, how did the 12Z? What did the 12Z show?
No, the 12Z says, the 12Z says that there's more suppression. The upper low in Canada holds on a little longer, and the high that's sort of enveloped around it. So when you look at that rain area, you see here's Saturday evening, and you've got this rain that's moving into southern Ohio and Indiana and into West Virginia during the overnight. But then to the northeast, you have the upper low and Sam, it kind of absorbs Sam and re-strengthens a bit. So, it brings rain to southernmost Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey on Sunday, but it doesn't get any further north than that.
Right.
So, again, if the system to the northeast is a little stronger, then everything gets suppressed. If it's not, then there might be some issues with some rain at some point on Sunday, particularly if you go, say, from New York City on south and southwest. 2 super chat hits tonight. First off, we have the chairman who hit super chat. Thank you, Mr. Scott. And he said that he's at his hotel in Wildwood. Somebody on their computer was listening to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. It's amazing. The hotels, that's a classy hotel you must be staying at, Scott, if they're listening to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Hope you had a good time and a good weekend. And also Steve LaPointe, who is back now in the People's Republic of the City of New York. And thank you, Steve, for reminding everybody to hit the like button on the video. It is most appreciated. Joe and I love it when you hit the like button. So let's go to the Joe and Joe. Let's go to the to Briller Jeopardy. Are you ready to be tortured tonight, Mr. Rayo?
Only if it's a category which I don't know, then I get tortured.
Okay, so let me bring it up. By the way, the latest recon fix, for those of you who are following this, dropped a millibar from 957 to 956. So let's see if that's the beginning of a the end of the obviously, I think the eyewall replacement cycle is done, and now we're going into maybe another bit of strengthening. But the slow movement is upwelling some of the water, so that is going to be a bit of an issue. Anyway, I'm just give me a moment here I have to switch profiles and get to the questions for tonight. So,
meanwhile, I'm looking here. Somebody on the chat board said, did you look at the forecast, the U.S. Weather Bureau forecast for September 21st, 1938, regarding the movement of the Long Island Express, the big hurricane that came up? And what was the forecast for the tri-state area? And you want to know something amazing? I'm looking here at the New York Times for that time frame. They have the forecast on their weather page show for Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, Western Pennsylvania, Western New York, Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey and Delaware, Maryland and Virginia, District of Columbia. They don't have any forecast for the New York metropolitan area on their weather page for September 21st. Now, for Eastern New York, they had
maybe that's like a national edition that you have instead of a New York City edition.
It might be. For Eastern New York, they had rain today. Tomorrow, cloudy and continued cool. For Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, rain probably heavy today and tomorrow. In the discussion, by the way, this again is on September 21st, the day that the hurricane hit Long Island in the mid and late afternoon. They write that the disturbance was over the Great Lakes region and has advanced eastward to southern New England coast, as now within a disturbed area which extends thence, never saw that before in a weather forecast, thence generally southward along and off the Atlantic seaboard, and within which a tropical disturbance is moving generally northward. This tropical disturbance still has considerable intensity with strong winds and gales over a wide area and winds of hurricane force near the center. The path of this center was expected to progress generally northward to northeastward, fairly well off the Atlantic seaboard, although strong northerly winds are expected over sections of the Atlantic seaboard between North Carolina and Massachusetts. Northeast storm warnings were displayed as far north as Atlantic City, New Jersey. So there you go. They had the idea that the storm was very potent, but it would stay well off the Atlantic seaboard, and they did have storm warnings posted as far north as Atlantic City, and of course, that really wasn't far enough north, as we
in those days that was probably their only weather source was whatever they read in the paper, because they didn't have somebody on the radio going sunny today, high mid-80s, clear tonight, low mid-60s. Exactly. All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so yes. So tonight there have been seven tropical systems in the Atlantic basins that have had their names retired that begin with the letter A. Let's see how many you can name of those seven. So you need four to pass.
Seven storms.
Seven with the letter A. That begin with the letter A.
How about Alma? As Alma was one of them?
No, Alma was not one of them.
Is that like a strike?
All right, if you want to call it that, let's call it a strike.
A.
Okay, so I'll help you with this one. You should be able to get two of these based on the names, based on the honeymooners.
Oh, really? You mean there was an Alice? Has there been an Alice that
not retired?
Oh, wait a minute. No. So, the actress who played Alice, Audrey Meadows. So, Audrey?
That is correct.
So there you go.
Okay, so that's
Trixie isn't on that list.
One. No. Now the other A can also come from the honeymooners. but it was a character, not a.
What? I'm getting. Oh, wait a minute. How about oh yeah, Alice's sister Agnes, right? 1972.
Agnes.
Agnes,
yes,
and we have
Agnes.
We have to watch out. Be very careful with that name because or with that character, because one of our people who is often on the chat board, Dennis Cassia, got thrown in Facebook jail. Believe it or not, on the honeymooners Facebook site, he quoted Agnes, what she thought about men, and that was a no-no. So I'm not going to say it. I don't think they would throw me in jail if I said it verbally here, but I'm not going to. But if you know the episode of the honeymooners and what she thought of men,
Beef, they're all beasts.
That's yeah.
You won't get thrown off the Joe and Joe Weather Show for saying that. By the way, Brandon Doherty hit super chat. Thank you, Brandon. Most appreciated.
There's another A which caused a lot of mayhem in Florida. Hard to believe, Joe, that this particular storm, this A storm, did not form until the very end of August. Would you believe it? We didn't have a storm christened until like late August. I think it was in what year was this? 92?
92.
How about
Andrew?
Andrew.
Yes, Andrew was the next one.
Which was a buzzsaw, for them. Yes, all men are beasts.
Exactly. So you got three.
Now, and there was one. There was one. Although he spells his name differently than our birthday boy today, Alan Casper spells Alan Alan, but didn't we have one in the early 80s, or maybe it was 1980? But does that count? Because I think that was in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, but well, they retired. Well, Audrey was a Gulf of Mexico storm. Alan was retired because at the time, even though when it made landfall in Texas, it had weakened to a Category 3. It was such a large storm, geographically, but it also at one point while it was in the Gulf, the pressure got down. I believe while it was in the Gulf, the pressure got down to 899 millibars, which was a record for that at the time. It took out Camille's low of. Although it didn't take out the Labor Day storm, which I think the Labor Day storm was 892, but then Gilbert came along, and that was that a few years later, and that took that record away. But yeah, Allen in 1980 was retired.
Now I have a question. Does this have to specifically be these? Not necessarily true that you would have a retired name. Why don't you turn off the light? Never mind. Renata came down here briefly, and I had the light on in the next room or whatever, because I like to look at lightness out there, and the sun is below the horizon. Now everything is dark there. Does a retired name necessarily have to be a hurricane, or can it be just a tropical storm?
There have been tropical storms that have had their names retired. Yes.
Because I do remember there was one tropical storm, I think it was along the Gulf Coast, that caused tremendous flooding, but it never made it to a hurricane. I think that was Allison.
Correct. Very good. Yes, that was I didn't think you were going to get that one. 2001, Allison.
Allison, which of course was also the name of Howard Stern's first wife, and I thought, believe it or not, that movie, which my wife detests, the Howard Stern movie, Private Parts, I think it's called, or whatever. And every time I flick it on, Renata says, "Take that off! Take it off now!" But whenever I watch it, and he's always he pays a homage at the end to his wife. He says, "And I got Allison." And I said, "Yeah, that was the name of a tropical storm too, Allison." So, That's how I remember that name. So what do I get? I get Allison and Andrew and Agnes and you mentioned Audrey, right?
Yes.
Was the Audrey thing? So I've got 4.
No, you
So
got
what's left?
No, you have
There's
5. Audrey,
and
Agnes,
and
Alan, Andrew, and Allison. So there's 2 left.
right. So what could they be?
One was in. I'll give you the years if that helps. One was in 19. Both were in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay. One was in 1977, and the other one was in 1983.
And I've totally drawn a blank.
Okay,
is any famous?
Oddly enough, both of these I remember very well. This is the one in 1977 was Hurricane Anita, and a couple of things about that, Joe. That A storm didn't form until after Labor Day. Okay, it formed in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and I remember this so clearly. I remember, those days if you recall, the Hurricane Center, they put those discussions out, and they were the secret prog. You weren't really supposed to read it, and you weren't supposed to send.
For intergovernmental use only.
Right, exactly. Which we all paid attention. Yeah, because we all paid attention to that. Anyway, what was remarkable about Anita was there was just like this cluster of thunderstorms in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And it just started moving west at like 5 miles an hour. And that pretty much is what it did. It was right along 25 degrees north. It moved straight west all the way at about 5 miles an hour. And, the Hurricane Center initially didn't expect it to they had it developing into a tropical storm, and it did. But they had to keep raising the bar because every time an advisory would come out, the pressure would drop a few more millibars, and the winds would go up, and then it became a hurricane, and then it became a Cat 2, and then a Cat 3, and then a Cat 4, and then it's nearing the Texas coast near Brownsville. It got to 925 millibars, and it was a Cat 5, just right there at the cusp of a Cat 5, or maybe I think that by pressure and wind, at the time with the definition, it was the first Cat 5 since Camille. So they'd gone 8 years without seeing one, and anyway, it got to within a couple of 100 miles of Brownsville, or just a little bit less than that, and it started to move more west-southwest, and it wound up going into Mexico about 50 or 75 miles south of Brownsville as a very strong Cat 4 hurricane. But it was one of these things where they were constantly playing. It's like you have a snowfall prediction, and you have to keep updating the forecast and raising your snow amounts, and that's
upping. Yeah.
The other one, and I was in Corpus Christi when this happened, and we talk about a small storm, is Hurricane Alicia, which really was a tiny. It was as small as Sam, and if you were if you were more than 25 or 30 miles to the west, to the south, on the south and southwest side, you got very little wind. But it was a very strong Cat 3 when it made landfall. It strengthened very rapidly right before landfall, and what was remarkable about that was because the gradient was so tight, the pressure gradient was so tight that it caused all the high-rise windows in Houston to be literally blown out. So there was
Wow.
there was building damage everywhere because of the fact that you basically went from a 10-12 pressure to a 940 something, almost within walking distance. Not quite, but you get the idea. So that was the other ace storm that was retired. So actually, a good educational and very interesting, the Briller Jeopardy here tonight. I like this one.
Yeah. I like this one too.
And
Yeah.
Brandon Doherty
How could I?
makes a great point. Just going back to Agnes, Joe. He says Agnes was only a Cat 1, but caused $2.2 billion of damage. And by the way, you need to that 2.2 billion is in 1972 dollars. So if you want to adjust that for inflation, you have to at least multiply that by seven, by maybe even by 10. So that would be maybe the equivalent of a $20 billion damage, and a lot of that was from flooding rains.
Yeah, that thing just it came in and idled. It made landfall close to New York City, and then moved on a path that took it over Pennsylvania, and it then just idled in neutral gear and just sat there for many days and just caused one day after another day after another day of rain and rain and rain. And that, as you said, Joe, it was mostly a storm that caused a lot of flooding. It was not much of a wind maker, but boy, did it cause all that damage in June of 1972.
Okay, very good. Let's do.
The chairman says, "What letter tomorrow?"
Once upon a time, I was probably good at these things, but I'm going to have a tough time remembering without a little bit of help. But you pick the letter.
By the way, Anita, there's only one other name that I remember of noteworthy instance with Anita, and that was a name that we all used to listen to and hear on the radio back in the 60s and 70s, and then she just disappeared. Anita Bryant, remember when she did all those orange juice commercials?
Yes.
And I remember why her career took a tailspin, but we're not going to get into that here. You want to Wikipedia Anita Bryant, you can find out for yourself. But
and I think she's still lurking.
Anyway,
I think she's still lurking about somewhere. You went through Katrina. No, I did not. Well, indirectly, because I did have a home in Louisiana, in southeast Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans. But I lived in the one. There was about a 1 or 2 square mile area in New Orleans and in the suburbs that didn't get any flooding from the levees breaking during Katrina, and my place happened to be there. So, but I sold that, but that's long gone. So anyway, yeah, no, I did not personally experience Katrina. I was up here at Pix at the time.
Oh, she was up here. Yes. So I guess that's it for the night.
That's it. Yeah, that's it for the night. So we'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern time. And thanks everybody for being here. Thanks to the super chat hits from the chairman and from Brandon Doherty and from Steve LaPointe. Most appreciated as always. 56 likes, not too shabby tonight. One thing about when the weather's really nice, Joe, the crowd is thin, which is understandable. When the weather is good, everybody wants to be outdoors.
When we get weather of significance, they know where to come. That's the simple stated truth. In fact, they know where to come.
Joe,
they come right here.
You might know this. 1953. What was because that's the first year that they started using names, like actual persons' names, as opposed to the what was it, the
well, they were using
what was
Abel.
That? Yeah, Abel and so on. But 1953 was the first one. And Brandon Doherty's question is, what was the first hurricane to hit the United States in 1953?
Well, the first hurricane was Alice. I mentioned Alice before. That was the first woman's name used for a hurricane. And Alice, actually, I'm looking here at one of the maps. There was a tropical storm actually before Alice. Well, wait a minute. Tropical storm number 2. Well, actually, Alice did hit the United States, believe it or not. I don't know, as a hurricane. It kind of like looped over Mexico, emerged from Mexico, passed along extreme western Cuba, stayed along the western Cuban northern coast for a while, and then worked its way up into the panhandle of Florida in 1953. So maybe that was the first named storm to hit the United States. The first one was again was Alice in 1953, and Alice turned out to be a storm that did actually interact with the United States.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of interesting hurricane trivia. When I know as the years gone by, I just lost track. I used to know. I used to know everything pretty solidly with regards to hurricanes and and their tracks, and now I remember some of them, but I've kind of lost it. Especially anything after
We had
anything after 2000 is a big blur.
ancient history. We had after Alice in 53, we had Barbara, Carol. Barbara hit the mid-Atlantic coast and passed just south of New York. Carol swept up into Nova Scotia. Then we had Dolly. We had Hurricane Dolly. That stayed out to sea, though. Didn't make any landfall. Edna, that also stayed out at sea. Florence hit the panhandle of Florida and then went across parts of Georgia. Gale, that stayed out to sea. And Hazel, that was 1953.
And they kind of kept that they only had that one list. And then they had to start replacing names when Carol came off the happened and Carol, Edna, one other one in that year,
guess what?
Ione.
Guess what? 53 we had a tropical storm Irene. And of course Irene I'm sure has been long since retired.
Yeah, Irene's retired, so yeah.
So.
All right, boys and girls. We'll see you tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern Time. Have a great night. Good night, everybody.
Nighty night.